You bought a homestead. Now what? Hey guys, welcome back to the Smith Family Ranch. You bought a homestead. Now what should you do?
So there's a lot of advice that goes around on YouTube, and some of it's good advice, but I think one of the biggest and most, negligent advice that people give is to sit on your homestead for a year and do nothing. Here's why I think that is perfectly wrong to do. The first and foremost reason is because you sat and did nothing for a whole year. Meaning nothing progressed on your homestead. None of your vision that you have for your homestead came to fruition. None of it developed. I know that the conception of the whole deal is that if you sit and wait and watch, then you can see the patterns during each season. But here's the falseness of that watching, is that the weather changes every year. And I'm not calling for climate change and getting political. Is what I'm saying is that when we first bought our homestead almost 3 years ago, there was plenty of rain in August.
Oh yeah. Green. It was
green grass, plenty of forage for cows. The 2 years since buying, each summer after that, there's been zero rain. And in fact, we had to feed hay this year in September, where the previous year, it was almost December when we started feeding hay. So had we waited, it might have either talked us out of cows or talked us into too many cows by sitting and waiting. But then you'll also see, as we take you through a tour of our property, of the things that have changed during the entire time of us owning this property, that had we waited and saw, it would have been a misinformation of what we were getting into on our property. So for instance, where our corral is for our cows, the person that we bought the house from built the corral. Well, the corral is built wrong, and it's honestly in the wrong spot, which we've been waiting for a year or 2 or 3 now, not to move it, but just the finances to do it. But it won't be there permanently. Another situation that's happened is that within the last year, in the springtime, we've gotten heavy rain that it's washing away our fence line. And it's really making a lot of our area into a wetland. And so even gardening, we would have had to change things. In fact, where our garden is now, one thing we learned, had we not actually planted, is the springtime last year, we got a ton of rain. And it washed away our seeds that were planted in ground. But had we waited, we wouldn't have learned that until year 2, which would have meant year 3, we are now going to be profitable, meaning we're going to be growing crops this year because we changed to raised beds.
So another thing, same thing with a garden. If we would have started a year sooner, we would have figured this out a year sooner. Mm-hmm. And now we're a year behind of what we could be.
I forgot which, it might have been VW Family Farms. I don't know. I don't remember the exact channel. But one of the channels had said that one of their most regrets on their homestead was actually not doing certain things sooner. Whether that be planting fruit trees, starting a vineyard, starting a garden. And so I think this concept of waiting for a year to watch every season before you do anything, I think it's bad advice in all honesty, because as people, we learn as we go. And if we just sit and watch, well, now you just wasted a whole year. Mm-hmm. And you're going to wish that maybe you hadn't wasted that year.
We wish we hadn't wasted that year.
I mean, and so as we develop as human beings, and as the weather changes from year to year, it's just really bad advice to wait a year. I say start small and get bigger. That would be my advice. Mm-hmm. So we started small with chickens. We raised meat chickens our very first year. Before we even got egg-laying chickens. My thing is meat layers are cheaper, so if we mess up with them,
Meat layers.
or meat chickens, yeah, meat chickens are cheaper to buy. So if we mess up with them, it's not as big on the pocketbook as it is on egg laying chickens. So then we ended up venturing into egg laying chickens. Then we bought cheap pigs because we didn't really know what kind of pigs we wanted. And so we bought cheap pigs. Well, now we have B&B Farms, which is our pig farmer that raises great pigs, great genetics, great taste, great flavor, great fat. And yes, they cost a little bit more, but now we're more comfortable raising pigs in any environment now.
Yeah.
Because we tested it on cheaper pigs.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had a pig die that taught us a lesson.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't a premium pig,
It didn't hurt the
it didn't hurt our pocketbook as much.
Yeah.
And so my advice, my main advice would be to start small and cheap, and then
right
grow
now.
from there. And start now. Start immediately. Start the day you buy the property. Start looking at things that you can buy that's relatively cheap that you can kind of experiment with.
So I'm thinking, like, we had different ideas of where we wanted the garden, and we had probably like 4 or 5 areas.
Yeah. No, yeah. That was
4 or
about
5
that.
areas, and then we kept going back and forth in where we wanted to do, and we waited, I think, over a year, didn't we? Over a year, probably a year and a half before we actually did our first garden, and I'm just kicking myself in the butt for not starting my garden faster. We did, choose on one specific area, and that's where we had originally thought, and then we moved it around and we went back to where we was. But even if it's not where you want the garden to be, at least you have it.
Yeah.
And you
It's
can
movable.
it's movable, absolutely. Especially if it's in ground, but even raised beds.
You can move
You
raised
can
beds.
move raised beds too. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be my biggest advice, is that you just start now and start small, start cheap, and get into it with your hands all the way in. Get your hands dirty. Figure out what works on your farm by you doing it, not waiting. Because waiting causes regret. Because as Darcy has mentioned with her garden,
Yeah.
but then it also causes regret on certain other times. Had
wait.
we waited for pigs, for instance, well, last year would have been our first year raising pigs, when the year before was our first year raising pigs.
Yeah.
That we made some mistakes with that we've talked about, that caused the death of one pig.
Living is learning.
And we've learned from that. We know what not to do now, which allows us to buy a little bit better pig that tastes better, that has better flavor, more fat, better bacon, all sorts of things. And then same thing with our cows. The first year that we had our cows, we just let them graze, and then we started learning, okay, we need to rotationally graze to get better
Yeah.
yard. So then we started rotationally grazing, and then we started realizing that we needed to rest the land. And this is just all stuff that we learned. Had we waited on cows, one, we would have had to have a bigger expense up front to mow our pastures instead of letting the cows do it. But then it allowed us to learn our land firsthand.
Yeah.
And hands in.
You can't really learn if you just sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
Like trial and error, people. Trial and error. That's how you learn. Yeah, you can watch a lot of YouTubes, but guess what? That's not your property.
Yeah, and that's true. And so if and when you buy a homestead, or if you just bought a homestead and you're just watching this, my suggestion would be to start now. Start immediately. Start figuring out like what kind of fruit trees you want to plant, and plant them. Figure out where you want your garden and just plant. Worst comes to worst, you got to redo it. That's it.
But
And then
at
you just
least-
move it.
You get to enjoy the fruit of your labor.
Yeah, and then you'll start getting literal fruit sooner because you planted sooner. Start raising pigs. Start raising chickens. Start cheap though. Cornish cross are usually 89 cents to 99 cents a bird, so it's cheap. Maybe you do that before you raise egg layers, because egg layers are twice the cost. So if something happens, it does hit the budget a little bit more.
Or just get 1 or 2 egg layers.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't want fresh eggs?
That's a good point. And so that's my big advice is start now and start cheap and then grow from there. You know, expand every so often as the budget and time and land allows. So, you know, don't just do a garden one year and then pigs the next year. Start a garden, get it going, and then do pigs.
But you know what? Those pigs can eat the scraps from your garden.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, when did we butcher our pigs? October? We butchered in October. We just got pigs
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. I love having pigs because my scraps go to the pigs. I feel like I put
Which produces bacon.
Yes, who knew scraps could produce bacon? But I feel like even though we're not eating it, it's going to something else. And because they're eating our scraps, our actual pig food, the pellets that we get, they're eating less of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I felt like so much money was getting thrown down the drain because we didn't have pigs.
Yeah, so while waiting on the land or watching your land for a year and seeing all the seasons, that may sound like great advice, but at the end of the day, I think it's bad advice. Our weather has changed every year that we've been here. From the first year to the second year to the third year. We went through a drought. Because of some of the weather, we got armyworms, which ate up all of our grass.
We only had those 1 year.
A drought started sooner in last year, which caused us to feed hay sooner.
Yep.
So 2 months more of feeding enough hay, that really might have, had I not realized that starting sooner and allowing us to learn about hay and cost of hay and where to buy hay and all that good stuff, had I waited, I might not even have gotten into cows in all honesty, but then realizing it's kind of not that big of a deal with expenses and all that stuff. So like last year when we had cows, hay soared because we were in such a bad drought here in Texas.
Oh yeah, it was horrible.
It started way sooner. And then last year we got into a drought, but it was so much later that it allowed the cows to feed more. And then, so the hay prices came down a lot, so because it allowed those farmers to get hay, 2 or 3 cuttings of hay. And so, just to recap and not take up too much of your time, start now, start cheap, start small, but start immediately. You bought your homestead for a reason. Sitting and waiting isn't going to help your homestead.
You're missing out on learning opportunities.
Absolutely. And the more you can learn, whether it be even sometimes through YouTube, but just physically doing the actual work, the better off you're going to be, and then the more advice that you can give to other people, especially in your particular area.
Yeah, so those are our reasons why we think you should start now and not wait.
That's right.
Thanks so much for coming along with us, guys. And if you haven't liked this video, go ahead and do so. And leave us a comment. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? We're up for discussion on this one.
We won't get offended.
Nope.
You can disagree with us 100%.
Absolutely. We do not.
Because at the end of the day, this is all about opinions.
Yeah.
Some people's opinions is to wait. Ours is not.
And we took the advice of we watched a bunch of videos and they said, wait a year, feel it out. We are kicking ourselves in the butt for that.
So don't kick yourself in the butt. Start now. Like our video. Comment.
And subscribe.
Subscribe and ring that bell.